You wake up one morning, walk into the kitchen, open the fridge, and you just stand there. You know you came in here for something. You had it in your mind 10 seconds ago, but now it's gone. And the worst part isn't that you forgot what you wanted. The worst part is that little voice in the back of your head that whispers, "Is this how it starts?" 5 minutes later, it comes back to you. Eggs. You wanted eggs. But that moment of blankness stays with you all day. That tiny window of nothing where your brain just went dark. I'm Margaret, and I've spent years researching brain health, cognitive decline, and something most people never hear about, which is the direct connection between what you eat for breakfast and how well your brain performs for the rest of the day. And here's what I need you to understand right now. That moment at the fridge, that fog, that delay, that isn't just getting older. That's your brain telling you it's running out of fuel. Not calories, not energy in the way most people think about it. I mean the specific raw materials your neurons need to fire, to connect, to remember, to keep you sharp and present and you. And the most surprising part of all of this research is that the foods that feed your brain best aren't new. They aren't exotic. They aren't sold in fancy health food stores with labels you can't pronounce. They're the exact same foods your grandmother put on the table every single morning, without ever knowing a thing about neuroscience. That's what this video is about. 7 old-fashioned breakfast foods that memory doctors and neurological researchers have now confirmed do something extraordinary for the aging brain. Foods that were on every kitchen table in America 60, 70, 80 years ago that we somehow stopped eating. And I'm going to show you exactly what they do inside your brain, how to prepare them the right way, and why the way your grandmother made them was actually more scientifically correct than most modern health advice. If this sounds like something you need, and I think it does, take a second and subscribe to this channel, because every week I put out research like this that could genuinely change the way you age. Hit that like button, and leave me a comment telling me what your grandmother used to make you for breakfast. I read every single one, and honestly, those comments are some of the best parts of my week. Now let me explain something important before we get to the list. Your brain is roughly 2% of your body weight, but it uses about 20% of all the energy you consume. 20%. That's an enormous demand for an organ you can hold in 2 hands. And unlike your muscles, which can burn fat or sugar or protein depending on what's available, your brain is extremely particular about what it runs on. It needs glucose, yes, but it also needs specific fatty acids to maintain the myelin sheath. That's the insulation around your nerve fibers. It needs choline to produce acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter most directly tied to memory. It needs antioxidants to fight oxidative stress. And it needs all of this in the first meal of the day, because your brain has been running on fumes all night long. Here's the problem. The modern American breakfast is essentially a sugar delivery system. Cereal, toast, orange juice, flavored yogurt, granola bars. Every single one spikes your blood sugar, triggers an insulin surge, and then crashes you right back down within 90 minutes. And when your blood sugar crashes, your brain is the first organ to feel it. That fog at the fridge? That word you can't find? That's a blood sugar crash in your prefrontal cortex. It's not dementia, it's not Alzheimer's, it's breakfast. And the beautiful thing is, your grandmother already knew how to fix it. She just called it a good hearty meal. Your doctor isn't wrong for not telling you this. In a 12-minute appointment, there isn't time to explain the relationship between breakfast choline and hippocampal function. That's exactly why I do what I do. So let's get into it. The first breakfast food is the whole egg. And I mean the whole egg, yolk and all. For decades, we were told that egg yolks were dangerous, that they raised cholesterol, that they clogged your arteries. And an entire generation of Americans started making egg white omelets and throwing away the most nutritious part of the food. Here's what the research actually shows now. A study from the University of Eastern Finland, published in 2017, followed over 2,500 men for about 22 years and found that moderate egg consumption, up to 1 egg per day, was not associated with increased risk of heart disease or stroke, and was actually associated with better cognitive performance on neuropsychological tests. And the key is in the yolk. 1 large egg yolk contains about 147 milligrams of choline. Choline is the direct precursor to acetylcholine, which is the single most important neurotransmitter for memory. When researchers at Boston University looked at people with higher choline intake, they found those individuals performed significantly better on memory tests and had lower rates of the kind of brain changes associated with dementia. Now here's the part that makes me emotional every time I think about it. Your great-grandmother, standing at that cast iron skillet at 6 in the morning, cracking 2 or 3 eggs into bacon fat, she was building a neurologically perfect breakfast without knowing a single thing about acetylcholine. She just knew that when her family ate eggs in the morning, they were sharper, steadier, and didn't come dragging in at 10 o'clock looking for something sweet. That cast iron pan, the smell of butter hitting hot metal, the sizzle when the egg hits the surface and the edges go crispy and golden while the yolk stays soft. That wasn't just cooking, that was brain medicine. Here's how I want you to eat your eggs. 2 whole eggs, cooked in butter or olive oil, soft enough that the yolk is still slightly runny, because heat degrades some of the choline. Eat them with your breakfast every single morning. If your doctor has told you to limit eggs because of a specific cholesterol condition, then absolutely listen to your doctor. But for most people over 60, 2 eggs a day is not only safe, it's one of the smartest things you can do for your brain. The second food is oatmeal, but not the kind you're thinking of. I'm not talking about those little instant packets with the artificial maple flavor and 14 grams of sugar. I'm talking about old-fashioned steel-cut oats, the kind that take 30 minutes to cook and have the texture of something real. The kind your grandparents ate during the Depression, not because they were trendy, but because a pot of oats could feed a family for pennies and keep everyone full and focused until noon. Steel-cut oats are what scientists call a low-glycemic complex carbohydrate. They release glucose into your bloodstream slowly, over 2 to 3 hours, instead of spiking it all at once like bread or cereal. For your brain, that slow drip of glucose is everything. Research from the University of Toronto has consistently shown that low glycemic breakfasts improve cognitive performance in older adults, specifically memory recall and sustained attention. The fiber in steel-cut oats, particularly beta-glucan, also feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut, and there's now strong evidence that your gut microbiome directly influences brain inflammation, mood, and cognitive function. If you've ever been to an old farmhouse kitchen in the Midwest, you might remember this: a heavy pot on the back of the stove, oats bubbling low and slow, and the whole kitchen smelling like warm grain and something almost nutty. They'd serve it with a pat of real butter melting into the center, maybe a drizzle of honey from somebody's uncle who kept bees, and a handful of whatever nuts were in the pantry. That's a perfect brain breakfast. Here's how to do it right. Use steel-cut oats, not rolled, not instant. A 1/4 cup of dry oats per serving. Cook them in water or milk for about 25 to 30 minutes. Top them with a tablespoon of butter or ghee because the fat helps your brain absorb the fat-soluble nutrients. Add a small handful of walnuts, which I'll talk about in a moment. And if you need sweetness, use half a teaspoon of raw honey, not sugar. Eat this by 7 or 8 in the morning, and I promise your brain will thank you at 2 in the afternoon when everyone else is crashing. The third food, and pay attention here because this one is wildly underrated, is sardines. I know, I can already hear some of you making a face. But before you skip ahead, let me tell you what's inside that little tin can, because it might be the most powerful brain food on this entire list. Sardines are one of the richest sources of omega-3 fatty acids on the planet, specifically EPA and DHA. DHA alone makes up about 40% of the polyunsaturated fatty acids in your brain. 40%. It's literally a building block of your brain tissue. And EPA is one of the most potent natural anti-inflammatories known to science. When researchers at the Framingham Heart Study analyzed blood levels of DHA in older adults, those in the top quartile had a 53% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease compared to those in the bottom quartile. 53%. From a fatty acid you can get out of a $2 tin of sardines. But there's more. Sardines are also one of the only common foods that contain significant levels of both vitamin D and vitamin B12, 2 nutrients critically important for brain health and that the majority of adults over 60 are deficient in. A B12 deficiency alone can cause symptoms that mimic early dementia, brain fog, confusion, memory lapses that scare people into thinking something is terribly wrong. In coastal communities around the world, from Portugal to Maine to the fishing villages of Japan, sardines have been a breakfast staple for centuries. In Portugal, they'd grill them whole over charcoal first thing in the morning and eat them on rough bread with a squeeze of lemon. In Maine, fishermen's wives would open a tin, lay them on toast, and send their husbands out onto the water with a brain full of DHA, before anyone had ever heard the term. The smell of sardines on a wood-fired grill, the oil glistening on the skin, the salt air mixing with the char. That was how people who worked hard and thought clearly started their day. Here's the practical part. Buy sardines packed in olive oil, with bones and skin. The bones are soft and edible and are an excellent source of calcium. Eat them on a piece of whole grain toast with a squeeze of lemon and a pinch of sea salt. 3 to 4 times per week is ideal. 1 tin is 1 serving. If you absolutely cannot stand the taste, mash them into scrambled eggs with a little hot sauce and you'll barely notice them. But give them an honest try first. The fourth food is walnuts. A walnut even looks like a brain, and I know that sounds like folk medicine, but in this case, the folk medicine was ahead of the science by about 400 years. Walnuts are the only tree nut with a significant amount of alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. They're also rich in polyphenols and vitamin E, both powerful antioxidants that protect brain cells from oxidative damage. A study in the Journal of Nutrition, Health, and Aging found that regular walnut consumers performed significantly better on cognitive tests measuring memory, concentration, and processing speed. Researchers at UCLA confirmed that walnut consumption was associated with better cognitive function across all age groups, with the most pronounced effect in older adults. In Appalachian families, walnuts were gathered every fall, dried in baskets on the porch, and cracked by hand all winter long. You'd find a bowl of them on the kitchen table next to the coffee pot, and people would pick at them all morning long while they talked and planned the day. The kids would crack them with a rock on the front step and eat them still warm from the shell. That rough, slightly bitter, earthy flavor with that almost creamy richness underneath, that was a flavor that meant home. And every single one of those families was feeding their brains without ever knowing it. Here's your prescription. A small handful of walnuts every morning. About 7 to 10 whole walnut halves. You can eat them raw, add them to your oatmeal, or chop them and stir them into yogurt. Don't roast them in vegetable oil. That damages the delicate omega-3s. If you buy them in bulk, store them in the freezer because the oils go rancid quickly at room temperature. Eat them consistently, every day, and within a few weeks you may notice your thinking feels a little clearer, your word recall a little faster. The fifth food is one I almost didn't include because I thought everyone already knew about it. But then I realized most people are eating it wrong. It's blueberries. But specifically, I want you to understand why these small, dark berries have earned the nickname brain berries among neuroscientists, and why the frozen ones from the back of your freezer might actually be better than the fresh ones in the produce aisle. Blueberries are loaded with anthocyanins, the compounds that give them their deep blue-purple color. Anthocyanins are a class of flavonoids that can cross the blood-brain barrier, which very few dietary compounds can do. Once inside the brain, they accumulate in areas associated with learning and memory, particularly the hippocampus. A landmark study at the University of Cincinnati gave older adults with early memory complaints the equivalent of 1 cup of blueberries per day for 16 weeks. At the end of the study, the blueberry group showed significant improvements in paired associate learning and word list recall compared to the placebo group. They also showed increased neural activity in the brain on functional MRI scans. Now here's something most people don't know. When blueberries are frozen at peak ripeness, the ice crystals that form inside the cells break open the cell walls, making the anthocyanins more bioavailable. Your body absorbs more of the good stuff from frozen berries than from fresh ones that sat on a truck for a week. And frozen blueberries cost about half as much. In the rural South and farm country all across America, women used to pick wild blueberries in July and put them up in jars for winter. They'd stir them into morning porridge or bake them into something simple with just flour and a little sugar. The stain on your fingers, the burst of tart sweetness when you bite into one that's still a little frozen in the center, the way they turn your oatmeal purple, that's your grandmother's hands in the kitchen, doing something right without needing a research paper to tell her so. Here's how to eat them for your brain. 1 cup of blueberries every morning, frozen or fresh. Add them to your oatmeal, eat them with your eggs on the side, blend them into a simple smoothie with some whole milk yogurt, or just eat them by the handful straight out of the bag. The key is consistency. 1 cup every day. The anthocyanins build up in your brain tissue over time, so this isn't a one-time thing. This is a daily practice, like brushing your teeth, except this one protects your memory. Now, before I get to number 6, I want you to know that number 7, the last one on this list, is the one that shocked me the most when I found the research. It's something so old-fashioned, so simple, that most modern nutritionists don't even talk about it. But the data is stunning. So stick with me. The 6th food is liver, specifically chicken liver or beef liver, prepared the way your grandmother would have made it, not the way a health influencer tells you to choke it down raw. Liver is one of the most nutrient-dense foods that exists on this planet, and it used to be one of the most common breakfast foods in America. During the Depression and through the 1940s and 1950s, liver and onions was a weekday breakfast in millions of households, not because people loved the taste, but because mothers knew instinctively that it made their families stronger, and the science backs them up spectacularly. 3 ounces of beef liver contains over 500% of your daily B12, over 700% for vitamin A, massive amounts of folate, iron, copper, and choline. Remember choline? The memory neurotransmitter builder? Liver has even more than eggs. 3 ounces delivers over 300 milligrams, more than 2 whole eggs. It also contains heme iron, which is absorbed far more efficiently than iron in supplements or plant foods, and iron deficiency is one of the most common causes of brain fog in older adults. In the Amish communities of Pennsylvania and Ohio, liver is still a regular breakfast food. They slice it thin, dredge it in flour, fry it in butter with onions until the onions are golden and sweet and the liver is just barely pink in the center, and serve it alongside eggs and sourdough bread. The smell of onions caramelizing in butter is one of those smells that can pull you back 40 years in an instant. The richness of the liver, the sweetness of the onions, the way the butter forms a little sauce on the plate, that's a breakfast that tells your cells exactly what to do. Now, I understand liver isn't for everyone. If you can't stand the taste, here's what I recommend. Get chicken liver, which is milder than beef, soak it in whole milk for 2 hours in the refrigerator before cooking. That pulls out the bitterness. Then sauté it in butter with garlic and a little thyme until just cooked through, and chop it into small pieces you can stir into your scrambled eggs. You will barely taste it, but your brain will get everything it needs. Eat liver 2 to 3 times per week. Not every day because vitamin A can accumulate, but 2 to 3 times is the sweet spot. If your doctor has you on a blood thinner like warfarin, talk to them before adding liver regularly, because the vitamin K content can interact with your medication. This is important. Don't skip that conversation. Now, number 7, and I told you this one would surprise you. The 7th food is bone broth, specifically the kind made from real bones, simmered low and slow for 12 to 24 hours until it gels like Jell-O when you put it in the refrigerator. Not the boxed stuff from the grocery store, not the fancy powdered supplements, the real thing, the kind that takes a day to make and fills your whole house with a smell so deep and savory that neighbors stop by to ask what you're cooking. Bone broth has been a morning staple in cultures around the world for as long as humans have been cooking. In southern kitchens, the pot liquor from simmered bones was the base of everything. In Appalachian homes, it was called stock, and it was always on the back of the wood stove, never fully finished, always being added to. In Asian cultures, bone broth soups are the most common breakfast food and have been for thousands of years. There's a reason for that. When bones simmer for 12 or more hours, they release compounds remarkably important for brain health. The first is glycine, an amino acid that acts as an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Glycine calms overexcited neural circuits, improves sleep quality, and enhances memory consolidation during sleep. A study from the Japanese Society of Sleep Research found that 3 grams of glycine, about the amount in one large mug of concentrated bone broth, significantly improved sleep quality and reduced daytime fatigue and brain fog. Bone broth also contains glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid, and minerals like calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus in highly bioavailable forms. But the compound that has brain researchers most excited is plasmalogens, essential components of brain cell membranes whose levels decline dramatically with age, and even more in people with Alzheimer's. Preliminary research suggests that dietary sources of plasmalogens, including bone marrow and bone broth, may help support brain membrane integrity. Here's the image I want you to hold. A woman in 1935, somewhere in Tennessee, standing at a wood stove before dawn. She puts a pot of beef bones on the back burner with water, a little vinegar, maybe a carrot and an onion. She lets it simmer all day and all night. The next morning, she ladles out a mug, now golden and thick, with tiny circles of fat floating on the surface. A pinch of salt. She drinks it standing at the counter while light comes through the kitchen window. She doesn't know about glycine or plasmalogens. She just knows that when she drinks her broth in the morning, she feels right. She feels steady. She feels like herself. Here's how you make it. Get 3 to 4 pounds of beef marrow bones or a chicken carcass from your butcher. Put them in a large pot or slow cooker with enough water to cover. Add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar to help extract the minerals, and simmer on low for a minimum of 12 hours, ideally 18 to 24. Strain it, let it cool, and store it in the fridge where it should gel into a wobbly, rich jelly. Every morning, heat up 1 large mug, about 12 ounces, season it with salt, and drink it before or alongside your breakfast. You can make a big batch on Sunday and it will last all week. Now I want to tell you about someone. Her name is Dorothy. She's 73 years old, retired school teacher from Ohio. About 2 years ago, Dorothy started noticing things that frightened her. She'd forget the names of students she'd taught for years when she'd run into them at the grocery store. She'd lose her train of thought mid-sentence while talking on the phone with her daughter. She started writing everything down, sticky notes all over the kitchen, because she didn't trust herself to remember anymore. Her doctor ran some tests, said her cognition was within normal range for her age, and suggested she keep her mind active by doing crossword puzzles. And that was it. Dorothy's daughter, who watches channels like this one, started doing her own research. She didn't ask her mother to overhaul her entire life. She made 3 small changes. 2 whole eggs every morning instead of toast and jam. Sardines on toast 3 times a week, and a big batch of bone broth every Sunday, dropped off in mason jars so Dorothy could heat up a mug each morning. Within 5 or 6 weeks, Dorothy told her daughter something that made them both cry. She said, "I ran into Patty Morrison at the post office yesterday and her name came right to me. I didn't even have to think about it." Over the next few months, the fog lifted little by little. She stopped needing so many sticky notes. She started reading novels again because she could follow the plot without rereading pages. Her doctor said her cognitive scores had actually improved, not declined. He asked what she'd changed. She said, "I started eating the way my mother used to feed me." I want to be very clear about something. Dorothy didn't cure anything. What she did was give her brain the raw materials it had been missing. The choline from the eggs, the DHA from the sardines, the glycine from the broth. Her neurons didn't suddenly regenerate. They just started working better because they finally had what they needed to do their jobs. And she did all of this alongside her regular medical care, with her doctor fully informed. Now I need to be serious with you for a moment. If you are currently taking any medication, especially blood thinners like warfarin or Eliquis, diabetes medications, blood pressure medications, or anything for a neurological condition, do not change your diet dramatically without talking to your doctor first. Liver is high in vitamin K, which affects blood clotting. Bone broth can change your mineral levels. Even adding a cup of blueberries daily can affect how certain medications are absorbed. None of this means you can't eat these foods. It means your doctor needs to know, so they can monitor you and adjust if needed. The goal is always to work with your doctor, never to replace them. So here's what all of this comes down to. Every food on this list, eggs, steel-cut oats, sardines, walnuts, blueberries, liver, bone broth, they all do the same fundamental work from different angles. They deliver the raw materials your brain needs to maintain its membranes, produce its neurotransmitters, calm its inflammation, and fuel its activity steadily, without the crash and burn cycle of modern processed breakfasts. Your grandmother didn't know the word neuroplasticity, but she knew that when she fed her family real food in the morning, they were sharper, calmer, steadier, and happier. The science has spent 70 years catching up to what she already understood standing at that stove. Here's your action plan. Step 1. Buy a dozen eggs and a bag of frozen blueberries today. Those are the two easiest changes, and they cost almost nothing. Step 2. This weekend, get some beef bones from your butcher and make your first batch of bone broth. Simmer it all day Sunday. Step 3. Replace whatever cereal or toast you're eating with steel-cut oats topped with walnuts and blueberries. Step 4. Buy 1 tin of sardines and try them this week on toast with lemon. Step 5. Talk to your doctor at your next appointment. Bring this list. Let them be part of the process. In my next video, I'm going to talk about something that directly connects to everything we covered today. And it's a topic that almost nobody is discussing honestly. It's about the 3 common medications that are actually depleting your brain of the very nutrients we just talked about. Medications that millions of people over 60 take every single day, and that may be quietly making their memory worse. You are going to want to see that one. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of that beautiful brain of yours. It's been taking care of you your whole life. It's time to return the favor.